and welcome to another episode of Our Own Devices with Nandagopal Rajan. With us this time is Navkendar Singh of IDC India, who's going to talk to us about, again, a topic that is really at the top of the mind for a lot of us, which is the advent of 5G finally into India. We'll talk about how this is really going to impact your lives, your tech lives. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you, Nandagopal. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So, so IDC has so much of understanding, so much of data, so much of insight into how companies are rolling out devices, how they are being sold. As of now, what is the outlook on 5G? We are maybe going to get 5G by the end of the year in some circles for sure. So do you think it is initially going to be a very top-end play where people who have very high-end devices will buy into the 5G services, or do you think it's going to be across the scale?
To start with, since there's been much noise around 5G for the past few years, and I think that has only been amplified in the past few weeks because of the auctions. So many consumers are actually asking for 5G devices now. But having said that, it'll still remain slightly at the mid-premium and the premium end. And the reason for that is that the component cost and the device cost will not allow it to be democratized to the levels where, and just to give a color to that, almost 60% plus of the market is less than $200, right? So in India, and about $100 to $200 is almost half of the market. There are not many 5G devices there. So most of the 5G devices are, when we say, there are a few models which are below 15,000, but generally mostly 15,000 and above. When you go to the market, it's almost a hygiene factor now. But the mass market still lies below. So it will still take some time. But now what will change is consumers will start asking for 5G now. It will be on the responsibility of the brand now how to provide that and the prices which are palatable. Initially, what has happened is, till now, India has shipped around 5 crore, about 15 million 5G devices since 5G first 5G device came in by Realme about a few years back. Now, mind you, this is without any 5G network, and it was not by demand; it was supply-led because the chipset and the SoCs were 5G enabled. Apart from only 5G capability, they were a lot better, chipset. But to mass market, it will still take a few quarters. We believe by mid of next year. To the end of next year. So H2 of next year, we should see some pricing being below $150. And
is it also going to take maybe something like it happened with 4G? You had very affordable services along with very affordable devices sort of coming at the same time and sort of creating a sweet spot. Are you expecting to see something like that happen? At the time we actually launch 5G services in India, where maybe at least one player comes into the market with something very affordable.
Absolutely. To your last point, one player, has to take the responsibility of seeding the devices in the mass market. Yeah. But I believe the comparison between 4G or 5G might be slightly different, because at 4G, when 4G happened, Reliance Jio was coming in. Although they were late by about 2.5 years, had they not been, as per plan by 2013-14 launch, they had their own life brands. But then by the time they launched, most of the China-based brands, they started coming from China and started bringing 4G devices at that time. And it actually intersected with the networks and overlapped with the networks coming in here. Here, the 5G devices are much, much more than even the network is there. And, anyway, before at least the mid of next year or end of next year, we will not have wide availability of 5G. Initial 5G network will only be in urban cities and even some corners of the urban cities, right? So even those 10 cities might not be fully covered. So I think all these should be, and then the pricing comes in. How many people, even if they had 5G, will they be able to pay $3, $4 for a 10 GB pack? So all this needs to be figured out.
So is there a messaging issue? How do you communicate to the user? What is the benefit that you're going to get?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's a major one, and that's going to be challenging for the entire ecosystem. See, from a consumer point of view, India is not, India has 500 million gamers, but let's be frank, most of them are Candy Crush or very casual gamers, right? Not many people, how many people need 800, 900 Mbps on the go? So apart from the speeds, which is buffering and other stuff, in most of the towns with Jio and other networks as well, video doesn't buffer much. So what do you communicate to the consumer? Is it gaming? Is it, is it only video not buffering? It has to be much more than that. I think that's going to be a major challenge apart from only a one figure change from 4G to 5G. 5G play will be on the supply side of the content, so enterprise services. And one of the major stuff which nobody seems to be talking about is India has abysmal broadband penetration, home broadband penetration, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the reasons smartphones have never taken off. So possibly this is a gateway where a telco comes in and says, this is a box which is a 5G enabled box with a SIM. And now on high bandwidth, your home can be connected on a cellular network. I think those are the areas where start coming in. Otherwise, to communicate a consumer use case is going to be tough.
I was in the US last week, and US is you can almost call it a mature 5G market, but you really don't see a lot of people using 5G still, right? So is there a reason for that? Like even in a market like US, it is not really, it's not really had hockey stick kind of adoption. Maybe, Japan and Korea are slightly different in that perspective.
See, again, going back to the previous point and previous question you asked, what's a consumer use case? I mean, again, how many people need such high speeds on the go, or even, most of our content is such nicely delivered to us that 300, 400 MBs or even 100 plus Mbps is good enough for us. I think that's going to be a challenge even in markets like Korea and others. There, the reason was that the entire networks actually migrated to 5G. I think that was the reason. So whenever that happens, obviously 5G, Japan started even testing about 5-6 years back, and same with 4G, right? So so they completely overhauled the network. But again, consumer use case will be difficult. I think more focus will be, and we speak to the infra providers as well, it will be on the enterprise side, and really how to get that kind of content delivered to the consumers.
Ultimately, when the services are going to start, do you think it's primarily the adoption is going to be with people who already have the 5G devices with them? And this is again nothing new, right? Because for the past 2 years, almost, like, people have been buying 5G. Like, anyway, you're buying a device for the next 3 years, and people thought maybe it will come last year. So people have been buying 5G devices for some time. So are these people going to be the first to move into the 5G bandwagon, or do you think there will be a lot of first people actually buying a device and moving at the same time also?
Even if installed base of devices about 600 million or 60 crore people, about 40 crore plus are less than 20,000 rupees kind of devices. So obviously they will migrate, and frankly, the organic growth of the market has stopped now. Not many people are coming first time to the smartphones. Mm-hmm. People like us are, within 600 million people are buying it more often, every 18 to 24 months, or even lesser than that, as you go, down the price ladder. So there will be some migration, organic migration, which will actually from 4G devices to 5G. But otherwise, most of the 5G devices which people have bought above, let's say 30,000, 35,000 in the last year and a half, are 5G enabled. Just needs to be seen that what bands are getting covered or not. So, but initially, depending on the pricing of the 5G plans as well, really the early adopters will be people like who are in urban areas who already have a mid-premium or a premium plus kind of 5G phone. They'll be early adopted depending on the pricing as well.
So, how are you seeing the big companies sort of look at this opportunity, so to say? Like, what is the strategy that they have in mind? Like, is everybody going to look at bringing maybe something under $200 to capture the mass market also?
See, they would love to do that. And that's where the supply side comes in. Right now, ironically, the 5G supply situation is much better than the 4G, right? But because it's slightly better, the component cost is, it's slightly difficult for the brands, rather very difficult for the brands to bring it below $150 right now. So I think in this quarter, we should not expect less than $10,000 or even $11,000. With sales scheme or something, you might get a phone which is at 14,000 or 12,000 right now. But it's very difficult for the brands to bring it or breach the mark of 10, 11,000. So that will remain a barrier. Brands will love to do that. But from a consumer point of view, they will start asking for 5G, and brands will be forced to actually give everything beyond 15,000 and not compromise on giving a high spec 4G phone versus a 5G, which was actually working till end of last year's festive season. That because 5G was still a few quarters, or there was no visibility of the bandwidth. So people are saying, okay, I can buy a high spec 4G phone versus a low spec 5G device. But now brands will be forced to do that. I think that will put a further pressure on the margins as well.
Are you seeing any specific brands sit at an advantage given the portfolio of devices that they have?
From a brand's point of view, the not actually surprising. It might be surprising to the observers of the market. Surprising leader, for the whole 5G is Samsung. Almost quarter of the market is with Samsung, and that clearly shows Samsung's intent of actually moving away from the entry level and less than 10,000 rupees. They've really spread the portfolio wide. And then what we have seen is Vivo and Xiaomi are clear, very close neck to neck, and then the others coming. So about 60% of the market is the top 5 brands. These brands are advantageous, but from a supply point of view, 5G supply is quite okay, so that's not a problem. It's just about brands trying to find a balance between pricing, what they can price where the volumes move, versus what all features they can give. And I'm sure a lot of discussions have already been happening, and this festive season is going to be very important for that.
Also, as you mentioned that you don't have phones in a certain price point, and it is difficult for companies to move to that price point. But do you think there is a possibility that the reverse could happen? And over the years, we have seen that the ASP has been moving up gradually in India, right? There was a time when 6,000, 7,000 rupee phones used to be the $100 phone. And
Right.
now the dollar is itself gone up. That's a different thing. But is it possible that you will see the market itself move itself up towards maybe a 15,000 price point because they don't want to be left out by buying a 4G phone at a time when 5G is rolling out?
So the ASP of the market right now, overall ASP of the all market, 4G plus 5G and everything, is already about $240, and that's a good 20,000 rupees, right?
Yeah.
But mind you, that's not purely because of demand. The market, I mean, this is in a market which is not growing. The ASP is going up. That means lesser people are buying more expensive stuff. That means they are forced to do that, or some people are not. They're not postponing their purchase. All this while, the 5G ASPs have actually gone down. 5G ASPs actually we've seen from almost $470, which is almost about 40,000 rupees. This year exit will be about $400, so about 3,300 rupees. That's about good 10-15% drop. So 5G ASPs are going down because more brands are coming in and all the economies of scale are kicking in, but the overall ASP is going up. Now this cannot go on forever because India market is still price conscious, and that's why as IDC we believe that this year the overall market, by the 5G is ballooning. We believe by Q1 or Q2 calendar next year, in another 2 or 3 quarters, we will move from 5 crore or 15 million 5G devices to about 10 crore and in a base. But the market itself is not growing. The overall market will shrink a little bit or remain flattish. So that means people are postponing their purchases. So this can't go on. The brand or the market has to bring 5G devices less than $150 whenever that happens, maybe 4 quarters down the line, for the real growth to kick in, so that the 400 million or 300 million who don't have a 5G device, they start buying it.
For our listeners who don't know, IDC is the international data corporation that looks at data at a holistic level, understands how the market is moving, how companies should devise their strategy or are devising their strategy based on the pricing, connecting the dots between what's happening in the market and the consumer behavior. So I just thought it's important to give that context to a lot of new users who might be wondering what is IDC, when I initially introduced Mr. Singh. So I'll come to another question. Like a lot of the strategy around 5G, I'm getting the sense, speaking to the market the stakeholders and all, that it might end up being devised by the networks, right? The network might give you a little bit of top up, like gaming or let's say sports streaming or something like that, just to keep you interested in this new package, more expensive package. But do you think the hardware players also might need to have a strong strategy, especially in a market like India, to woo more people to buy this product?
Oh, absolutely. So think from a brand or a hardware, right? For example, any of the smartphone brands. Now, they are in the market where nobody can bring it below 12,000, 13,000 rupees realistically, right? Mass market. So, and everyone is able to do that about 15,000 rupees. Now, everyone is in the market, and top 5 players is about 80% of the market. 2/3 of 2/3 of India market is all the China-based players. So everyone is able to bring 50,000 plus. Now, how do you differentiate? Now the 5G starts kicking in. Now what you do is, and it has been happening, India is not a market where reverse bundling happens. We are not a market like USA where contracts happen because we can't enforce the contracts. There's no way to collect the money even with the bad debt. So forward bundling always has happened. You bundle some data. Now, right now, obviously the content consumption is so high, and to really give the taste of the speech to the consumer, and from a telco point of view, they have to increase the RPU about 350 rupees. So they, if they start getting per month about $5, $6 from a prepaid, 95% of the market is prepaid. If they start getting there, so you say that by this model, in the first 15 or 20 days of the launch of the model, you get 2 GB data from Airtel or Jio free, plus these many OTT apps, this first consumption and other stuff free, right? So these are the kind of the things which will start happening, games and other stuff, start kicking. I think there will be a lot of competition around these kind of offers. It's beneficial for all the parties. Telco gets a consumer who gives a slightly higher ARPU. Hardware is able to differentiate and sell it to the market, and consumer gets a free taste of the data. So I think that's a win-win situation. This will start coming in again. It was missing in the last 3-4 years.
We discussed about smartphone and that ecosystem, but the 5G rollout could also be a big opportunity for a different set of hardware producers, right? Like in the IoT space, you might see a lot of devices that use 5G to create a lot of other experiences beyond smartphone itself.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what, the first point I, highlighted. I think beyond only the smartphones, there'll be a case around the smart home. Surveillance camera market has, in India has been very close circuit TV. I use about 4 Xiaomi cameras, and they're connected nicely to the broadband because I have the luxury of having a high-speed broadband. Not many people have. And that's a limitation with setting up a smart home, even with the smart TVs as well. So I think that's an area where telcos and these hardware makers will start coming in together and say, okay, this is a box. This is 5G enabled box which talks to the cellular, even if you don't have a broadband connectivity here, all the wires, copper wires and everything else. But I can set up your smart home, and these are the offers. I think that's an area where a lot of stuff can happen, even in urban markets. That's a low-hanging fruit, apart from all the natural evolution and the progression and us going from 4G to 5G as a network.
So you were listening to Navkendar Singh, who's Associate Vice President, Client Devices and IPDS at IDC India. Mr. Singh, thanks a lot for being on the show. Very insightful, because we have always been talking about the network coming in and how it's going to sell and all. We haven't really talked about the devices and connecting it to the network. Thanks a lot for giving us this insight.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on the show. Bye. Thank you.
So you were listening to Our Own Devices. We'll be back again next week with another guest and more insight. Till then, you can listen to us everywhere you listen to your pods.